She kissed me first, in her office, with the door locked and the lights low. It was almost midnight. The cleaning crew had already passed our floor. I remember the city lights behind her, the way they reflected off the glass wall, turning her into a silhouette for a second before she stepped closer. Her hand slid into my shirt collar like she had done it 100 times before. Calm. Certain. I don't have much time, she said softly. I thought that meant she wanted me. I was 36, newly divorced, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Chicago that still smelled faintly like the lemon cleaner my ex used. I worked as a senior operations manager at Calder and Rowe Technologies. Solid job. Good reviews. Predictable life. I had built a routine around not expecting much. She was the CEO. Elena Morales. 47. Sharp suits. Clean lines. Always 5 steps ahead in meetings. People went quiet when she spoke. I'd watched her run a boardroom like it was muscle memory. I'd also watched men twice her size talk over her, then laugh too loudly when she shut them down. The first time I really saw her, though, wasn't in a meeting. It was in the parking garage on a Tuesday evening. She was standing by her car, phone pressed to her ear. Her posture was perfect, like always. But her voice wasn't. "I've given this company 20 years," she said, low and controlled. "If you think I'm stepping aside because the board wants a younger face, say it directly." There was a long pause. I wasn't trying to listen. I just froze when I heard the word younger. Another voice came through the phone speaker, faint but sharp. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught enough. "Market optics. Energy. Relatability." She laughed once, but it wasn't amused. "You mean 35 and male?" Silence again. Then she said, quieter, "Understood." She ended the call and stood there for a second. Not crying. Not breaking down. Just still. I should have kept walking. I usually do. I'm the kind of guy who minds his own business. Reliable. Not dramatic. The guy who stays late and fixes what's broken without asking for credit. But something about the way she held herself. Like she refused to bend, even when they were trying to replace her with a fresher version. It felt familiar. My ex-wife had once told me, during one of our last arguments, "You're stable, Mark. But you're not exciting." Stable. Not exciting. Replaceable. I don't know why that night in the garage felt connected. Maybe it was the look on Elena's face. Not hurt. Just tired of being measured. She noticed me then. Our eyes met across the concrete floor. For a second I thought she'd snap back into CEO mode. Polished. Distant. Instead she just gave a small nod, like she knew I'd heard enough to understand. The cruelty scene came 2 days later. Boardroom, quarterly review. One of the newer investors dialed in remotely. Mid-30s, venture capital type. Confident in that careless way. At one point, while Elena was outlining the long-term growth plan, he interrupted. "Have we considered bringing in someone who better reflects where the tech space is heading?" he asked. "Someone with, I don't know, more runway?" The room went quiet. Runway. Like she was a product with an expiration date. She didn't flinch. She finished her sentence. Calm. Professional. Controlled. But I saw her jaw tighten. I don't usually speak up in executive meetings unless I'm asked. That's just how it works. But I heard myself say, "With respect, the growth we're seeing this quarter is directly tied to the strategy she implemented 3 years ago." Every head turned toward me. The investor chuckled. "Of course. I'm just talking about optics." "Optics don't build systems," I said. My voice was steady, even if my heart wasn't. "Competence does." There was a pause. A long one. Elena didn't look at me right away. When she did, it wasn't gratitude. It was something more complicated. Surprise, maybe? Or warning. After the meeting, she called me into her office. Door closed. Glass walls dimmed with the privacy switch. "You don't have to defend me," she said. "I wasn't defending you," I replied. "I was defending the plan." She studied me for a moment, like she was trying to decide what I was really made of. "You realize aligning yourself with me right now isn't exactly safe," she said quietly. "I'm not exactly chasing excitement," I told her. That made her smile, just barely. Over the next few weeks, we started staying late more often. At first it was about work. Restructuring timelines. preparing responses for the board. Quiet strategy sessions. She was different after hours. Shoes off. Hair down. Jacket draped over her chair. Less armor. One night, after a brutal call with investors, she sat on the edge of her desk and rubbed her temples. "They think I'm finished," she said, almost to herself. "Like I've passed some invisible line." "You haven't," I said. "You're loyal," she replied. It wasn't an insult. But it wasn't affection either. The first time she touched me, it was subtle. A hand on my forearm when she thanked me for staying late. It lingered a second longer than necessary. I felt it for hours. I told myself it was nothing. She was stressed. I was projecting. Then came that night. The city glowing outside. The office quiet. She stepped closer. Her hand on my collar. Her mouth inches from mine. "This doesn't leave this room," she said softly. I nodded before I fully understood what I was agreeing to. When she kissed me, it wasn't hesitant. It was controlled. Like she was choosing something deliberately, not losing control. Her fingers slid into my hair. My hands found her waist. I remember thinking, this is real. This is two people choosing each other. She pulled back just enough to look at me. "Don't confuse this," she said. "Confuse what?" I asked, breath still uneven. She didn't answer directly. She just kissed me again. And I let myself believe that whatever she was afraid to name, it would change. I didn't realize then that I was already stepping into something she had no intention of giving back. But that night in her office, with her hands on me and the world shut out, I thought I had finally stopped being the stable, forgettable man. I thought she saw me. I had no idea what I was about to become instead. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Board meeting at 9. She walked in sharp and composed, navy suit, hair pulled back tight. She didn't look at me longer than necessary. If anyone had seen us the night before, they would never have guessed. I sat halfway down the table, laptop open, pretending my chest didn't feel hollow. After the meeting, she sent me a message. "Come by at 6. After everyone leaves." That was it. No emojis. No softness. Just a time. I told myself this was normal. She was careful. Of course she was careful. She had more to lose than I did. 6 came. The floor emptied out. I could hear the elevator ding down the hall. When I walked into her office, she was by the window again. Jacket off. Sleeves rolled slightly. City lights behind her like the other night. "You're thinking too much," she said without turning around. "About what?" "About this." She faced me then. Calm. Controlled. But closer than necessary. "I meant what I said," she added. "Don't confuse it." "I'm not," I lied. She stepped forward, fingers brushing the inside of my wrist this time. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just intentional. "This is uncomplicated," she said quietly. "We're adults. We know what we're doing." It sounded reasonable. Clean. Logical. I nodded again. And for a while, it did feel uncomplicated. We kept working late. Strategy sessions turned into wine and paper cups from the break room. Wine turned into her hand on my knee under the desk. The door locked more often. But the first real conversation happened a week later, and it wasn't physical. It was almost midnight again. We had just finished revising a presentation for the board. She was leaning back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. "Do you know what they called me in the early days?" she asked suddenly. "No. Relentless." She gave a small smile. "Back then it was a compliment. I didn't say anything. Just waited. Now it's intimidating," she continued. "Difficult. Too much. And apparently," she added dryly, "aging out." She said it lightly, but her fingers tightened around the glass in her hand. "That investor crossed the line," I said. "They all think it," she replied. "He just said it out loud." There was a pause. The quiet kind that stretches. "My ex-wife used to say I wasn't enough," I said before I could stop myself. She looked at me then, really looked. "Not enough how?" "Exciting. Ambitious in the flashy way. She wanted someone who filled a room. I fill spreadsheets." Elena let out a soft laugh. Not mocking. Almost warm. "Spreadsheets keep the lights on," she said. "Apparently not in a marriage." She didn't smile at that. She just studied me, like she was lining up pieces. I was married once, she said after a moment. I hadn't known that. He loved the idea of me, she continued. Young executive. Rising fast. But when I started making more than him, when the hours got longer, he didn't love that version. What happened? He left, she said simply. Said I chose work over us. Did you? She held my gaze for a second too long. I chose survival, she said. Something shifted in the room then. It wasn't about tension. It wasn't about her hand drifting toward mine. It was recognition. Two people who had been measured and found inconvenient. You don't seem like someone who's finished, I said quietly. And you don't seem boring, she replied. That landed somewhere deep. The conversation drifted after that. Stories about early career mistakes. About terrible first apartments. About takeout dinners eaten over laptops. She told me she used to be terrified before every board presentation, that she would sit in her car and rehearse opening lines until her hands stopped shaking. You? She asked. I still rehearse before calls, I admitted. Just not in my car. In the bathroom. She laughed then. Really laughed. Time slipped. I checked my phone at one point, and it was almost 2 in the morning. You should go, she said softly. But she didn't move away. Instead, she reached out and traced a finger along the inside of my palm. Slow. Thoughtful. You're steady, she said. It sounded different that night. Not like a flaw. Almost like she was trying it on as something valuable. You make things feel less loud. My chest tightened. And you? I asked. What about me? What does this feel like to you? There it was. The question I shouldn't have asked. She stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of her skin through her blouse. It feels good, she said. That's not what I meant. I know. Silence again. Her hand came up to my jaw this time. Thumb brushing lightly over my cheek. I don't do messy, she said. I don't do expectations. I don't have space for that. For what? For someone needing more than I can give. The words were calm. Measured. Almost kind. I'm not asking for more, I said. But even as I said it, I knew I was. She searched my face for a long second, like she was checking for cracks. Mark, she said softly, and hearing my name like that did something to me. We're two adults who understand each other. That's rare. Let's not ruin it by making it heavier than it needs to be. Then she kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was controlled, like she was sealing an agreement. I wrapped my arms around her waist, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing against mine. For a moment, the world outside that office didn't exist. But somewhere underneath the warmth, there was a thin line of doubt. She had drawn a boundary. And I had stepped over it in my own mind. When I left her office that night, she handed me her private number. Text, not call, she said. And only after 8. I looked at the number glowing on my screen like it meant something permanent. Okay, I replied. As I walked to the elevator, I felt both lighter and more unsteady than I had in years. We weren't just coworkers anymore. We weren't just physical either. At least, that's what I told myself. I didn't realize then that she had already defined this in a way that protected her. And I was still hoping it might turn into something she had already decided it wouldn't be. 2 weeks later, I knew the pattern of her footsteps in the hallway. That's how it started. Not with fireworks. Not with declarations. Just routine. She would text around 7:30. Still here? I'd reply. Yes. Even if I wasn't. I'd come back. At first, we kept it contained to her office. The door locked. The blinds half drawn. The same low lamp on the corner table. It felt secret, controlled, almost clinical in the way she approached it. She always initiated. A hand at the small of my back while reviewing a spreadsheet. Fingers sliding along my wrist as she handed me a file. The brush of her thigh against mine when we sat side by side on the couch instead of across the desk. By October, it wasn't just late nights at the office. We started meeting at her penthouse downtown. High-rise building, doorman who never looked surprised by anything. The first time I walked in, I noticed how quiet it was. Clean lines. Neutral colors. Everything in its place. No photos on the walls. She poured wine. took off her heels, let her hair fall loose. "You don't talk much," she said that night, settling beside me on the couch. "I do," I replied. "Just not loudly." She smiled at that. The physical side deepened quickly. She was confident, almost detached in the way she guided things. Like she knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't afraid to take it. I didn't mind. I felt chosen. Wanted. Seen in a way I hadn't been in years. But afterward, she would roll onto her side of the bed and check her phone. Not constantly. Just enough. I told myself she was busy. She ran a company. Of course she was busy. After a month of this, I realized something. I was rearranging my life around her. Canceling drinks with friends. Skipping family dinners. Telling myself work needed me late when really she had texted. "Come over." She never came to my place. The one time I suggested it, she hesitated. "I prefer neutral ground," she said lightly. "It's not neutral if it's always yours." She studied me for a second, then leaned in and kissed me, slow and deliberate. "Does it matter?" she asked against my mouth. At the time, I said no. By November, we had inside jokes. Small things. The way she would tap twice on the counter when she wanted my attention. The look she gave me across a boardroom table when someone was being ridiculous. Texts during the day that weren't about work. "Eat lunch. You look tired. Proud of you for that presentation." Those messages meant more to me than the late nights did. 6 weeks after that first kiss, the work crisis hit. A major client threatened to pull out over a security issue. Emergency meeting. Investors panicking. Board members circling. She was in command mode again. Sharp. Efficient. But I could see the strain around her eyes. We ended up in the conference room until almost 3 in the morning, whiteboard covered in timelines and backup plans. At one point, when everyone else stepped out to take calls, she leaned against the table and closed her eyes. "Tell me we can fix this," she said quietly. "We can," I replied. "But we need to own it. No deflecting." She opened her eyes and looked at me differently then. Not as the man who showed up after hours. As the operations manager who knew what he was doing. "Walk me through it," she said. We worked side by side. Not touching. Not flirting. Just thinking. Planning. Adjusting. For the first time, it felt balanced. When we presented the revised plan to the board the next day, she let me take the lead on implementation. I could feel eyes on me. Measuring. After the meeting, one of the board members pulled me aside. "Good work," he said. "Didn't know you had that in you." I almost laughed. As if I hadn't been doing it all along. That night, at her place, she didn't start with a kiss. She handed me a glass of water and said, "You were solid today. So were you. I'm expected to be. And I'm not." She stepped closer. "I expect it from you," she said. There was something softer in her voice that night. We sat on the edge of her bed, still dressed. Talking about the crisis, about how exhausting it was to always prove yourself. "They think I'm emotional because I care," she said. "If I were a man, they'd call it passion." I nodded. "They think I'm steady because I'm quiet. They don't see the work behind it." She reached out and traced her fingers along my jaw. "I see it." That sentence settled deep in my chest. By December, we had fallen into something that looked like a relationship from the outside, even if no one knew. She would rest her head against my shoulder while we watched late-night news. She would fall asleep with her hand curled into my shirt. But she never used the word us. And she never stayed the night at the office with me when we worked late. She would always send me home. One evening, after we had been together for almost 3 months, I asked, "What are we doing?" She didn't answer right away. She was standing by the window, city lights below. "We're not doing anything wrong," she said carefully. "That's not what I asked." She turned toward me slowly. "We're adults who enjoy each other. We help each other. We don't complicate it." "It already feels complicated," I admitted. She walked back toward me and sat on my lap, hands resting on my shoulders. "Mark," she said softly, "don't turn this into something heavy. It's already heavy for me." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her expression shifted, just slightly. "That's what I was afraid of," she murmured. I felt it then. The imbalance. I was building a life around quiet moments and shared looks. She was managing an arrangement. Still, when she kissed me, when she pulled me close and whispered, "Stay tonight," I chose not to push further. Because despite the warning signs, despite the way she kept certain doors closed, I had started to rely on her. On the texts. The touches. The way she said my name when we were alone. 6 months after that first coffee in her office, I realized something else. I wasn't just steady anymore. I was invested. And I had no idea how much that was going to cost me. I knew I was in love with her the night the board tried to corner her. It was late January. Snow coming down in heavy sheets outside the office windows. The crisis from December had settled, but the board hadn't forgotten the security issue. They called an emergency review. Just her and 3 of them in the conference room. I wasn't supposed to be there. But I was. They questioned her judgment. Her long-term vision. One of them even suggested bringing in a strategic partner to help steady things. The same language they'd used months ago. Polite. Dismissive. She stayed calm. Answered every question. No raised voice. No cracks. But I saw her hands when she thought no one was looking. Slight tremor as she closed her folder. When it was over, she walked out without saying a word to anyone. Straight to her office. I waited 5 minutes before following. She was standing by the window again, coat still on, staring at the snow like it might give her an answer. "They're circling," she said quietly, before I even spoke. "You handled it. That's not the same thing as winning." I closed the door behind me. "They're scared," I said. "You don't scare people unless you're capable." She let out a soft breath. "You always make it sound simple." "It is simple," I replied. "They don't deserve you." That got her attention. She turned toward me slowly. "Careful," she said. "That's a dangerous sentence." "Why?" "Because you're starting to sound like this is personal." "It is personal." The room went still. She took a step toward me. "Mark, I'm in love with you." It came out steady. Not dramatic. Just true. For a second, she didn't react. No gasp. No visible shock. Just a long, searching look. "You weren't supposed to say that," she murmured. "I know. This is exactly what I said I didn't have space for." "I know that too." Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Real. "You deserve someone uncomplicated," she said finally. "Someone who can give you the whole thing. Dinners with friends. Weekends away. Not this." "I don't want uncomplicated," I replied. "I want you." She looked almost angry at that. Not at me. At the situation. "You don't know what you're asking for," she said. "If this becomes public, they'll say you're sleeping your way up. They'll say I'm clinging to youth. They'll question every decision we've ever made." "They already question you," I said quietly. "At least this would be real." Her jaw tightened. "I won't let you be collateral damage," she said. "I'm not fragile. That's not the point." She moved closer, stopping just inches away. I could see the conflict in her face now. The guards slipping. "You think this is love," she said softly. "It is. And if it costs you? It's already costing me not saying it." That seemed to land somewhere deep. Her hand came up slowly, resting against my chest. Not seductive. Not controlled. Just there. "You make me feel steady," she admitted. "Like I don't have to perform." "You don't," I said. "I built my whole life on not needing anyone." "You don't need me," I replied. "You choose me." Something shifted in her eyes. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against mine. For a moment, we just stood there, breathing. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Me too." She let out a small, shaky laugh. "You were never supposed to matter this much." "I know. And I do love you," she said, almost like it surprised her. The air left my lungs. "You do?" "Yes," she said firmly now. "And that's exactly why this is dangerous." We stood there for a long moment, letting the truth settle. "What do we do?" I asked. She stepped back slightly, still holding my hands. "We do it properly," she said. "HR, disclosure. Restructure reporting lines. No secrets. That could speed up what the board wants." "It might," she agreed. "But I won't hide you." That was the first time she had framed it that way. Hide you. I moved closer and kissed her. Not rushed. Not strategic. Just relief. When she kissed me back, there was no distance this time. No calculation. Just warmth and certainty. Her hands gripped my jacket like she was anchoring herself. I don't want to lose this, she said against my mouth. We won't. You can't promise that. No, I admitted. But I can promise I'm not walking away. She pulled back slightly, studying me like she had that first night in her office. You're not boring, she said quietly. You're not finished, I replied. A small smile touched her lips. Okay, she said. We do this. Not reckless. Not hidden. Together. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, for the first time, it didn't feel like an arrangement. It felt like a choice. And we were about to find out what that choice would cost us. We told HR on a Monday morning. No drama. No hand-holding across the desk. Just two adults sitting side by side in a glass office that suddenly felt very small. Elena did most of the talking. We've entered into a personal relationship, she said calmly. We understand the reporting conflict. We'd like to restructure immediately. HR blinked twice. Asked procedural questions. Took notes. Used phrases like disclosure compliance and conflict mitigation. I kept my hands folded in my lap so no one could see they were slightly shaking. By Wednesday, the org chart changed. I no longer reported directly to her. Technically, I moved under the COO. It looked clean on paper. Professional. Responsible. It also made everything visible. The whispers started the following week. Nothing direct at first. Just the way conversations quieted when I walked into the break room. The way people looked at her, then at me, then back at her. One afternoon, I found an anonymous note folded on my desk. Hope the promotion was worth it. There was no promotion. I crumpled it and threw it away before anyone could see. Elena got emails. Anonymous, of course. Questioning her judgment. Suggesting favoritism. One even implied she was desperate to stay relevant. She didn't show me all of them. I found out later. The first real hit came during a leadership meeting. One of the directors, a man who had always been overly friendly with her before, leaned back in his chair and said, "We just need to make sure decisions aren't being influenced by personal loyalties." The room went still. I felt heat rise up my neck. Elena didn't flinch. "Are you questioning my integrity?" she asked evenly. "Just optics," he replied with a small shrug. Optics again. I spoke before I could stop myself. "If you have a concern about a specific decision, raise it. Otherwise, this is inappropriate." He smiled like he had been waiting for that. "See? That's what I mean." After the meeting, Elena closed her office door and stood very still. "I told you this would happen," she said quietly. "I can handle it. That's not what I'm worried about." "What then?" "They're going to try to use you against me." The doubt crept in slowly after that. 3 weeks into the gossip, the COO called me in. "Off the record," he said. "You need to be careful. There's talk that you're advancing faster than you should." "I've been here 9 years," I replied. "I know. But perception matters." Perception. That word again. That night, I almost didn't go to her place. When I did, she could tell something was off. "What happened?" she asked, setting her phone aside. "I don't want to be the reason they push you out," I said. She stared at me like I'd said something absurd. "You think I'd let them rewrite my story because I'm dating someone? I think they'll try. They've been trying for years," she replied. "You're not the cause. You're the excuse." I ran a hand through my hair. "Maybe we should pause. Until things settle." Her expression changed immediately. Not anger. Something sharper. "Pause," she repeated. "I don't want to hurt you. And you think walking away protects me? It might." She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the tiredness in her eyes. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "If you leave because of them, then they win. Not just professionally. Personally. I don't care about winning. I do." The word hung between us. "I've spent my entire career proving I deserve my seat," she continued. "I will not prove that by sacrificing the one person who stood up for me before he even touched me." That stopped me. She took my hands in hers. "We're not doing anything wrong," she said quietly. We disclosed. We restructured. We're transparent. They're still talking. They can talk. I searched her face for hesitation. For regret. I didn't find it. You're worth the noise, she added softly. No one had ever said that to me before. The real turning point came in early March. The board announced an internal audit of the security issue from December. Routine, they said. Standard procedure. But everyone knew what it was. Pressure. I worked 12-hour days that month. Documenting processes. Gathering reports. Double-checking every decision I made. I refused to give them anything they could twist. During the audit presentation, I spoke clearly. Directly. Answered every question without defensiveness. When it ended, one of the board members nodded. Thorough, he said. Impressive. No mention of Elena. No sideways glance. Just my work. A week later, the audit report came back clean. No misconduct. No inappropriate influence. No preferential treatment. The whispers didn't stop overnight, but they changed. They shifted. People started coming to me with operational questions again. Not because of who I was dating. Because I had delivered under pressure. One afternoon, I overheard two managers talking near the elevators. He's solid, one said. Always has been. It wasn't loud praise. But it was real. That night, Elena and I sat on her balcony. Early spring air. City humming below. They won't stop entirely, she said. I know. But they're quieter. For now. She leaned her head against my shoulder. You didn't run, she said. You didn't let me. A small smile. We're stronger than I thought, she added. We had to be. The gossip had tested us. The fear had nearly broken us. But standing there, with the audit behind us and our names still intact, something had changed. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It wasn't even just love. It was partnership. And for the first time since that night in the parking garage, I saw something different in her. Not someone bracing for replacement. Someone steady. With me. We didn't move in together right away. That surprised people, I think. They expected something dramatic. A bold statement. Instead, we did what we always did. We moved carefully. By early summer, the noise at work had faded into background hum. Not gone, just tired. People had new things to talk about. Elena was still CEO. Still sharp. Still commanding rooms without raising her voice. And I was still there. Not because of her. Because I had earned it. One Saturday in June, she came over to my apartment for the first time. I had cleaned twice. Rearranged the couch. Bought new coffee mugs because mine suddenly felt inadequate. When she stepped inside, she looked around slowly. So this is your world, she said. Most of it, I replied. It was small. Brick walls. Books stacked on the floor. A kitchen that barely fit two people. Nothing polished. She ran her fingers along the spines of my books. Paused at a framed photo of my sister and me. You never invited me here, she said. I wasn't sure you'd want to come. She turned toward me, softer than usual. I don't just want neutral ground, she said quietly. I want yours. That was the first time it felt like something was shifting toward normal. Not secret. Not strategic. Just two people figuring out where to put their shoes. 2 months later, I spent more nights at her place than mine. We fell into simple routines. Grocery runs on Sunday mornings. Coffee on her balcony before work. Quiet evenings where we both answered emails from opposite ends of the couch, our feet touching in the middle. No grand gestures. Just presence. She met my sister in August. Small dinner at a casual restaurant near the lake. No penthouse. No executive energy. My sister studied her at first. Protective. Curious. By the end of the night, they were laughing about something I had done as a kid. On the drive home, Elena stared out the window. You didn't look embarrassed, she said. Why would I be? Some men are. I'm not. She nodded slowly, like she was storing that away. Her turn came in September. She invited me to a small dinner with 2 longtime friends. Women she had known since before the company took off. I was nervous more than I expected. Not because of their judgment. Because this felt permanent. One of them pulled her aside at one point. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the expression. Concern, maybe? Then a glance in my direction. When Elena came back, she slipped her hand into mine under the table. She likes you, she said later. She just doesn't want me hurt again. I don't either, I replied. By October, I had officially ended the lease on my apartment. We didn't make a big announcement about it. No social media posts. No dramatic photos. I just carried my boxes into her building one Saturday morning while the doorman held the door. Her place changed slowly after that. My books mixed with hers. A framed photo from our hiking trip in Vermont appeared on the shelf. My old coffee machine found a permanent spot on the counter. It felt less like a penthouse and more like a home. Professionally, we kept strict boundaries. No closed-door meetings unless necessary. No visible favoritism. We disagreed openly in executive sessions when needed. If anything, we were harder on each other at work. People noticed that too. In November, I was offered a promotion. Director of Operations. It came from the COO, not her. You've earned this, he said plainly. When I told Elena that night, she didn't smile immediately. Are you worried? I asked. I'm proud, she said. Then, after a pause, and relieved. Relieved? That no one can say you're here because of me. I stepped closer. I'm here because of me, I said. And because you pushed me. She looked at me carefully. I didn't push you. You did. You expected more. That night felt different. Not charged. Not secretive. Just steady. We sat on the kitchen floor with takeout containers between us. Talking about budgets and travel plans and whether we should finally repaint the guest room. Normal things. Real things. The proposal happened in December, almost a year after that first night in her office. No grand restaurant. No flash mob. No cameras. We were in the kitchen again. Late. Snow falling outside, like it had the night I confessed. She was standing at the sink, sleeves rolled up, rinsing dishes. I was thinking, I said. That's dangerous, she replied lightly. I took a breath. I don't want this to just be something that worked, I said. I want it to be what we build the rest of our lives around. She turned off the water slowly. Mark, I know you don't like messy, I continued. And this won't be simple. But I don't want a version of my life where you're optional. She walked toward me, searching my face the way she always did when something mattered. You're serious? Yes. I'm older than you, she said quietly. I know. I work too much. I know. I'm not easy. I know. She let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. You're very steady, she said. That's not an insult anymore. She reached up and touched my face. You're not asking because you're afraid of losing me, she said. No. You're asking because you want to choose this. Yes. She studied me one more second. Then she nodded. Okay, she said softly. Yes. No dramatic tears. No falling to the floor. Just certainty. I pulled her into me and held her there, feeling the quiet weight of the decision settle around us. We weren't chasing excitement. We weren't proving anything. We were choosing each other. And this time, there were no locked doors. We got married on a quiet Sunday in April. No ballroom. No 500 guests. Just 30 people in a small lakeside venue about an hour outside the city. Early spring air. Trees just starting to turn green again. Elena didn't want a spectacle. Neither did I. She stood by the water in a simple ivory dress. Not dramatic. Clean lines, like everything she chose. Her hair down, soft around her shoulders. For once, no armor. I remember thinking how calm she looked. Not guarded. Not bracing. Just there. I wore a dark suit I'd had tailored properly for the first time in my life. My sister straightened my tie twice before the ceremony started. Don't mess this up, she whispered. I laughed. But my hands were shaking. The ceremony was small. Chairs set up facing the lake. A light breeze moving across the water. No music blaring, just a soft instrumental playing from a speaker someone had tucked near the trees. When Elena walked toward me, she didn't look at the guests. She looked straight at me. The same way she had in that office when I told her I loved her. Steady. Certain. The officiant kept it simple. A few words about partnership. About choosing each other every day. No grand speeches. When it was time for vows, she went first. "I've spent most of my life proving I don't need anyone," she said, voice clear. "You never tried to change that. You just stood beside me." There was a small pause. "You didn't rescue me. You respected me. And you loved me without asking me to shrink." I felt my throat tighten. My turn. "I used to think being steady meant being forgettable," I said. "You showed me it could mean being trusted." I looked at her hands in mine. "You didn't make me louder. You made me braver." No poetry. No big promises. Just truth. When we said, "I do," it didn't feel like a leap. It felt like the next logical step. After the ceremony, we had dinner at long wooden tables under string lights. Her friends. My sister. A few colleagues who had watched the whole story unfold from the beginning. Even the COO came. He shook my hand and said quietly, "You handled yourself well this year." It meant more than I expected. There were people there who had once whispered. Who had once looked at us like we were temporary. Now they clinked glasses and smiled. At one point during dinner, one of the directors who had questioned our optics months ago came up to Elena. "I misjudged the situation," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. She nodded once. "I know," she replied calmly. No bitterness. No victory speech. Just grace. Later that night, when most guests had left and the lights were dimmer, Elena and I stepped away from the tables and walked down toward the water. Her shoes were in her hand. My jacket draped over my arm. "Remember the parking garage?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Unfortunately. You looked so tired." "I was. And now?" She looked around at the empty chairs, the lake, the soft lights still glowing. "Now I'm not fighting alone." We stood there quietly for a moment. People had said it wouldn't last. That I was a phase. That she was clinging to youth. That the power dynamic would collapse under pressure. Instead, the pressure had clarified things. We had disclosed everything properly. We had survived audits, whispers, sideways comments. We had kept our work clean and our boundaries clear. She was still CO. I was still advancing on my own merit. Nothing had fallen apart. If anything, it had settled into something solid. As we walked back toward the venue, she slipped her hand into mine. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For not treating me like I was past my prime." I stopped walking and turned toward her. "You were never past anything," I said. "They were just late." She laughed at that. A real laugh. Not the controlled one she used in boardrooms. That sound alone was worth everything we'd faced. When we finally left that night, just the two of us, there were no flashing cameras. No dramatic exit. Just her hand in mine. And the quiet certainty that we had built something people didn't expect. Not because it was flashy. But because it was real. A year ago, if you had told me I would marry my CEO, I would have laughed and changed the subject. Not because it sounded impossible. Because it sounded like something that happens to other people. Louder people. Braver people. I used to think my role in life was to be steady in the background. Reliable. Useful. Replaceable if necessary. And she used to think love was a liability. Something that would weaken her position. Something that would be used against her. We were both wrong. What I learned is that loneliness doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a high-rise office with the lights still on at midnight. Sometimes it looks like a quiet apartment where no one is waiting for you. And courage doesn't always look loud either. Sometimes it looks like speaking up in a boardroom when someone crosses a line. Sometimes it looks like telling someone you love them even when you know it could cost you. People will measure you. Your age. Your position. Your timing. They will talk about optics and strategy, and what makes sense. But none of them live inside your life. Age is not an expiration date. It's experience. It's earned strength. It's scars that teach you how to hold someone without squeezing too tight. And being steady is not the same as being forgettable. It means you stay when things get uncomfortable. It means you don't fold when whispers start. It means you build slowly instead of chasing what shines. If I hadn't spoken up that day in the boardroom, none of this would have happened. If she had chosen comfort over honesty, we would have ended quietly before we even began. One decision. One sentence. One moment of refusing to look away. That's all it took to change everything. We still argue about small things. We still work long hours. Life didn't become perfect when we said our vows. But it became shared. And that matters more than anything. If you're waiting because you think you're not exciting enough, not young enough, not bold enough, I can tell you this. The right person won't need you to be louder. They'll just need you to show up. Your story isn't finished because someone says you've passed a certain age. It isn't smaller because it doesn't look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes the strongest love is the quiet kind. The kind that survives audits and whispers. The kind that stands in the open and says, "We're not hiding." That's what we built. Not perfect. Just real. And real was always enough.